What if your leadership blind spots are silently sabotaging your team? Enter Sylvie Di Giusto, Fortune 100 keynote powerhouse, best-selling author, and pioneer of the immersive 3D storytelling. She has cracked the code on bridging the gap between how leaders see themselves and how their teams truly perceive them. From bias-busting strategies to emotional intelligent hacks, personal branding, Sylvie serves actionable insights which you'll be able to put into practice before this episode ends. Let's get stuck in. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Business Strategist with myself, Adam Strong. And today we have an absolute amazing guest here on the show. Well, we always have amazing guests, but this week is quite exceptional. And I recently came into contact with a lovely lady. She's based in Florida, but she's actually originally from Europe. Probably one of the reasons why we get on exceptionally well. What really got me fascinated about her, she is the first immersive 3D keynote wizards. What is a 3D immersive keynote wizard when it's at home? If you get the opportunity, head over to her website. We'll put all the show description notes below and check out her YouTube video. It is absolutely amazing. She uses a lot of holographic, great visual effects, and it really brings the stage alive. She has an arsenal of amazing tools. She has some great tools on things like sales, leadership, emotional intelligence, all these wonderful, juicy topics that we're going to be talking about today. So without further ado, Sylvie, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Adam. I'm so impressed by your introduction. I wish I could take you with me as an announcer on stage every single time. And I'm so grateful that I can be with you here from sunny Florida in probably, let me guess, cold and cloudy and rainy United Kingdom.
Because everyone says that. Everyone says that, right? So everyone that comes onto the show, right, whoever doesn't live in the UK, they always associate England with rain and grey.
Well, and I'm in the business of judgmental thinking, and in this case, I'm gonna say we are totally right because I have visited your beautiful country around 24 times, and I have yet to see it without rain.
Do you know what? You're probably right 85% of the time. By the way, guys, never visit between December and February. She's right. Anyway, I digress. Listen, looking forward to today's show. And I know we've had some great conversations offline. For you guys that are listening in, we're going to be covering some real interesting conversations around biases, around leadership. We're going to be talking about how first impressions count, how to align yourself as a leader more than anything else, so we can fulfill the gap between what you perceptually think that you are in terms of a leader and what your team perceptually thinks that you are. And there could be a real disparity between the two, right? And then we're going to go into coaching mode, which I love coaching mode, by the way. It's one of my favorite parts of the session. Most of the people that come onto the show do coaching mode, and we just have a whole lot of fun. Normally, I get myself ripped to shreds, but I enjoy that. Anyway, I digress. It's been really good to chat to you offline. Your background is, you've been in corporate for like 20 years, haven't you? And
Yes. I started out in corporate Europe, actually. After a few years as a consultant, I had the pleasure to work for one of the biggest retail and tourism organizations in Europe. Half of it might actually be known to you was Thomas Cook, and the other half was Arcando Karstadt-Quelle, a retailer in Germany. And I had the great pleasure to be there responsible to build up their management and leadership academy and be responsible for their top 100 leaders and to look out for top talent that we hired for this organization. And after 20 years, I have to admit, Adam, I always had a lifelong dream to live in the United States, supposedly since I'm a little child. And when that dream came true, I dropped everything, literally dropped everything, and 9 days later was on a plane. And since ever then live in the beautiful United States, first in New York City and now here in Tampa, Florida.
Wow, so you're living the American dream.
I'm living the American dream. And despite of what you might hear over there, it is as amazing as you envision it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's jump straight in. I'd like to go straight into the leadership realm because it's certainly a topic that I know that our listeners are super interested in and up in their game. But I'd love to learn about how leaders in specifically often grapple with the disconnect between how they see themselves, right, and how their team perceives them.
Yeah.
And there's this gap. And why does this perceptual gap emerge? Number one, but number two, as part of that, is what strategies can leaders use to bridge without kind of compromising their core values? Does that make sense?
Let me share a short story first, and then I'm going to answer your questions. During my time in corporate, I observed how we very often hired talent from the outside, because we had a position to fill and we interviewed candidates, and usually the top candidate, they said all the right things during the interview, they behaved exactly the way we wanted them to behave, they even looked the way we wanted them to behave. Wanted them to look. Then, years later, the people we just hired, I had to fire because of a total lack of performance, or a total gap between how we perceived them, how they were, and how they actually showed up then in operations day by day. And on the other side, we had so many young and talented and ambitious people in that organization. We always wondered afterwards, why didn't they stand out to us as potential leaders? And why didn't they present themselves also as potential candidates? What is wrong with the way we perceive them, or maybe also how they perceive them as potential candidates? So I was quickly, already in my corporate career, drawn to the idea of there is a gap between how we see ourselves, how we see others, and how others see us. And that always fascinated me. Now, as a keynote speaker working with audiences or with organizations and leaders, to answer your question, why is there that gap? Especially as a leader, I call it the CEO disease. We do think that the further we come in our career, the more self-aware we are. And the more self-aware we are of the way we perceive ourselves and how others perceive us. But spoiler alert, the opposite is true. The further you come in your career, that's why I call it CEO disease, the less self-aware you are. That has nothing to do with the fact if you are a good human being, a good leader or not. It is just a process that happens automatically because you become more confident in the choices that you make without questioning them. After all, you have all those years of experience, and you have less people telling you the truth. Because more and more people are dependent of you, are in some sort of relationship with you, and somehow intervened, that even they can't always really reflect back to you what they truly think about you. So, the reality is perception is nothing that you and I can talk about. Perception is nothing that we can discuss. Perception is nothing that people tell you to your face. Perception is what happens behind your back. But if you don't try to control it a little bit, at least, then somebody else will control it. And that's why I always encourage leaders to at least choose those areas in their professional identity where they have the opportunity to control it. So that they are the ones who tell the narrative, and the narrative they want to tell.
Yep, I love that. Great answer. And something off the back of that I wrote down here actually, and maybe this certainly applies to people in the corporate world, but I was actually thinking of our audience, which are kind of the smaller business owner who has maybe they might have been in business for like 20, 30 years. And one of the things that I picked up, and you said it, that as someone becomes more and more experienced, they get less and less feedback from the outside world. And you're absolutely true. And you're absolutely bang on the money. Now, I'd like to discuss why that happens. Is it because someone is afraid to question that they've questioned their authority? Or is it because they don't want to fall out of line? Why does this happen?
For a variety of reasons. Maybe it starts all with you. Maybe as a business owner, you have lost the ability to actively listen because you are so sure that your products, your services are just the top of class, right? And what's needed right now. So why questioning anything? And we all know as business owners, we only hear from our clients and customers when something really goes wrong. Right, when it's already too late. And if we are lucky, sometimes we hear from them when something really goes well and they praise us. But what is with the thousands in between? Maybe you as a business owner have lost the ability to constantly question yourself, question your business, question your products, question your services, and listen better into the market, how it is truly perceived, because you are, of course, so intervened in the day-to-day operations of your business. But then, of course, as a business owner also, it depends a little bit on the product and service that you sell. Is it something your clients are not really dependent on you? Is it a one-time purchase and they move on? Is it something they are dependent on you because you have to build a long-term relationship with them where trust plays a huge role? How dependent are they on you really? There is a difference. Are you in the medical center, right? And you work with something that is related to their health, to their well-being. I always say when health and children and money is on the line, trust plays a huge role. And then there are other things where, customers don't question you this tough and the relationship is different with you. So it depends on so many things. And that is always the challenge, Adam. When people ask me, so give me one tip, give me a piece of advice, right? Tell me, how can I imprint trust instantly on somebody? I always tell people, there are no one-size-fits-all formulas. All those others, with all the respect, speakers, thought leaders, coaches, who give you those 3 points to do, ignore the reality that your situation, Adam, is 100% different than my situation and then the situation from every single listener. What is most important is a skill that is most underrated, and that I call situational awareness. You have to have the situational awareness to read the room and in every interaction, no matter how it is and what it is, to adjust and adapt.
You know what? I think you're bang on the money. Yeah, I spoke about this on a podcast a few weeks ago. And I feel like, especially when you're established and you've been in the game for a while, is that situational awareness and also self-awareness, because they're two very different things, but also very similar. I feel like it's such an underrated skill to have. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's so underrated. If you had a leader that came to you and said, hey, so, and you kind of picked up straight away that their self-awareness and their situational awareness was just kind of like a little bit below par for being someone that's maybe senior or someone that makes constant decisions. What are some of the practices or tips that you may offer them to improve their situational awareness?
Well, I always start with a 3-step process, no matter if it's a big audience, if it's a single leader. And just as a heads up, backing up, Adam, as I understand, I'm going to take you through this one as well in a moment. But, every single leader is an individual. Every single leader wants to be known for something different. And I force my clients or my audiences or you in just a moment to define that with one word. And the challenge is really to define it with one word. What is the one word you would like to imprint on everybody, anybody? right? No matter if it's your client as a business owner, no matter if it's your team, if you have somebody in your business, no matter if it's your partners you work with your business, no matter if it's your spouse, your children, your neighbor, you cannot pick what is one word that applies to all of them. Now, here's what often happens. It has to stay between the two of us and the internet. Very often leaders then pick high value words, prestigious words, where society has taught us over the years that this is what a good leader should be perceived of. And I don't let them go because I don't want these ones. I want the one word you want to be known for. And sometimes when I have them down to the moment of truth after hours, those words are not so positive anymore. They don't have that positive hue. Some want to be known for being powerful. Some want to be known for being wealthy right now in the moment. And that is absolutely okay, right? Those words change over the course of time. Our values and beliefs change over the course of time, and our environments change. But you need to tell me your true, real world.
Okay.
And then we look.
That's good.
Do you want to tell me?
I can tell you right now. But and now for you guys, by the way, that are listening in, imagine Sylvie is actually sitting with you on a sofa. Write down your one word that you want to be known for. So I'm going to share her what my one word is, and she doesn't know, by the way. She doesn't know, by the way. She has no clue what I'm about to share with her. But the one word that came to my mind that I would like to be known for is excellence.
Excellent. A level of excellence. I like that. Good. I'm going to keep that in mind, and I'm going to come back to that word later on. Okay?
Cool.
So now, when we defined what you want to be known for and how you would like to be perceived, that is just one part of the occasion. Because now we need to look into your clientele, right? Are those the expectations that they have? Do you actually fulfill what they are looking for? And the reality is, if you are in the business of healthcare, your patients look for things like care, compassion, more softer terms and words that are related to their health and their well-being. If you are in an industry that is related to money, if you are a financial advisor, those words sound very different. If you are in IT, those words sound very different. And if you are in law, those words sound very different. So what is most important for you is to find out what are the expectations of your top clients. Now, I help my audiences here with my own research. I can tell you, for example, that in healthcare, I have sourced around 25,000 individuals at the moment, different industries. Ask them, what is the number one word that comes to your mind when you think of your picture perfect doctor, when you think of your picture perfect teacher, picture perfect police officer, picture perfect real estate agent, and so on. And so I can give them the data based on their industry. And since I don't know in which industry all of our listeners are, I'm just going to tell you the top, let's say, 3 words that are across all industries, always at the top, although they vary. Number 1 is trust. They want to instantly trust you. Number 2 is care. They want to feel that you instantly care about them. And number 3, you lucky guy, Adam Strong, is excellence. It's in the top of the words, a level of excellence and quality, right? So now you need to look into, do I really project that? Do I also project what my clients expect from me? There is a difference. If you wouldn't have said, Adam, excellence, you would have said, I want to be known for being creative. How does creative and trust fit together? How does excellence and trust fit together? How does I want to be known for being dominant and trust fit together? So you're looking, how do those 2 words fit together? And then there's the 3rd word. For business owners, that is your business brand, right? Because it could be that you have your own leadership, visions and missions and philosophies. It could be that your clients expect something from you, but you have to represent a specific brand, a fitness brand, for example, whatever brand. So you also need to look into what does that brand stand for. Just as corporate people need to look into what company do I serve, because the Adam Strong who values excellence is expected by his clients to be trustworthy, might be working for a brand like Apple that is known for innovation, which are three very different terms. And this is how I help them fill the gap. And before I go too long into a monologue, ask me how somebody can fill that gap.
Well, so how do they fill the gap then? Please tell us, Sylvie.
Such a smart question, Adam. Thank you very much.
Such a leading question, such a leading podcast.
Yes. I use a framework ABCDE, not very creative, but easy to remember. A stands for your appearance, the way you look, like it or not. You project a visual image every single day in person and online. People think that they know something about you just by looking at you. We are visual creatures. 90% of information in our brain gets transmitted in a visual way. That's just how we are built. Our brain is very lazy. That's why it takes a shortcut through the eye. Your B stands for your behavior. Can you adjust your behavior to imprint excellence and trust and whatever? That means your attitude. That means your charisma when you walk into a room. That means your conflict management skills when you interact with somebody. That means your basic etiquette. Do you shake hands? Do you look somebody in the eyes? How do you behave in interactions? Your C stands for your communication, the verbal and the non-verbal communication, starting always with how good of a listener are you? Then what does your body and your facial expressions say about you? Do they imprint those words or do they just run on autopilot? Your word choices, your voice, your language palette, all the elements that are part of your communication. Your D stands for your digital footprint. Because, like it or not, most often nowadays we don't imprint in person anymore. Most of our interactions are in some sort of way digital. The emails that you send out, the posts that you make on social media, the things that you like and endorse on social media, the time that you spend online. What do I find about you on page 1 on Google? The virtual meetings that we have, the podcast recording that we just have, right? And then the E, the most underestimated one, your environment. It's not just about you. Also, the living and the non-living things you surround yourself with also say something about your level of excellence, for example, Adam, which means that your car, your house, the vacations you go on, the hobbies that you have, everything that you share somehow with us that we can take into consideration to possibly misjudge you or perceive you rightly, right? But also the people you surround yourself with. Are they on the level of excellence that you deserve and that you aspire? Because we take them into consideration too, your friends, your colleagues, your network, your family. How do they represent you and how do you reflect back on them?
Very good.
And those are the 5 elements we worked on to fill up those gaps so that you can still stay yourself. Always stay yourself. If excellence is your core theme, do never allow anybody to go away from that.
Love it.
The second one, but somebody has to send you a check, right? At the end of the month, we are dependent of the success of our businesses. Let's just be honest. So we also want to fulfill our clients' and customers' expectations. And we do that by understanding what they are looking for and by understanding the brand that we represent.
Yeah, love that. I think you've given us a great framework to work with. And I think what's really important, especially to you listeners, is that thinking about that one word. And then I suppose in a way, Sylvie, would be to kind of put yourself in a quiet room and asking specific questions like you've gone through with me today and gone through the ABCDE framework, if you like.
Yeah.
But I think it's so it fits so well. You know what I mean? Asking those specific questions. And if we don't know the answers, I guess go out and research or ask questions, right?
Exactly. Your perception or your image or your brand or however you may want to call it, I call it your identity, your professional identity. It is like a puzzle of millions of pieces. And your only chance is you will never be, let me say it this way, you will never be able to finish that puzzle. Never. But you can at least start building it. You can at least start controlling parts of it rather than other people control it. And the unfortunate thing is also about that puzzle. I share a lot about unconscious biases and how they influence people. There is a bias called negativity bias, that we have a tendency to always see the things that are wrong first before we see the things that are right. I give you a fun example from my presentations. Again, this has to stay with the two of us and the internet. You can't give it away to my audiences. I purposefully have a typo in my slide deck right at the beginning. Purposefully, an obvious one, so that I can remind them at the end how influenced they were right at the beginning when they saw that typo and thought, I didn't even care enough about my audiences to grammar check my slide. So I revealed that it was on purpose, right? And it's always a big laugh because they catch themselves, because that's exactly what they thought. Wait, she doesn't grammar check her slides. How can she help us with our leadership challenges? How can a financial advisor take care of my money if he doesn't do this or that? So we very quickly put things together in our brains.
Love it. I want to go back to the framework really, because believe it or not, I'd already kind of put some questions together, but they beautifully intertwine to your framework. Isn't that a coincidence or what? I guess we're kind of like, even though we're, 6,000 miles away from each other, we seem to be very well connected. But I want to go back to first impressions, because we know that first impressions count. You talked about appearance in your framework. But what happens, especially from a leadership perspective, where unintentionally that our actions or behaviors, should we say, backfires, right? It backfires and it has a knock-on effect to your reputation. How can we as leaders, but also as business owners, reverse engineer that, maybe take from experience and say, okay, well, next time I need to do this, but there might not be a next time, of course. But what have you ever been in a situation where that's happened to someone, maybe yourself or a client or whatever it is? Walk me through what happened and what did you advise them about?
Well, then let's reverse engineer it, just like you suggested.
Let's do that.
Okay? Let's go back at the very beginning, the first impression that you made, bad or not. Go with me. All of us have traveled at one point, right? Go with me into a hotel right now in your mind and walk into the lobby, and you arrive at the check-in, and the person who's working at the check-in, the receptionist, is just distracted and is not taking care of you. And then finally, after you already had to wait an entire, of 3 minutes or so, the person looks up and recognizes that you are here, and then you're already kind of annoyed of how you don't feel welcomed in this hotel. And then you walk to the elevator, finally with your hotel key, and then you push the elevator key, and that elevator, it seems so long until it comes. And then you are in the elevator and you see the menu of the restaurant, and you see, damn it, breakfast only starts at 8 a.m. and I needed it at 6:30 a.m. And then you walk into the room and it smells weird. And all of a sudden you hear the ice machine in the hallway, and you find that little piece of paper that the cleaning lady didn't see. What happened here is a variety of unconscious biases just influenced you heavily from the very first moment. Because if you would have checked in to that hotel and had a fantastic, wonderful first interaction. They would have instantly noticed you, welcomed you, know what that customer or that guest is looking for. You might have walked to that elevator and might have not even noticed that it took a little bit longer. You might have looked at that menu and instead of the breakfast options, you focused on the dinner options. You might have walked into that hotel room and might have never seen that little piece of paper in a corner left. Our brain leads us down a path that is heavily influenced by our past experiences and by stories that we relive and that we want to be right on, because we are looking for proof that this is going to be a bad experience in this hotel. Its biases like confirmation bias. We are looking for confirmation. Its bias is like anchoring bias. We can't let go of that anchor in our head from that first initial interaction with the receptionist. Maybe they really had something quite critical to do. Maybe they just got a horrible call from one of their family members. We will never know, but we don't let go. The bandwagon effect, because then we go online and find 2 more negative reviews about that hotel. So of course we are right, because we are number 3, right? We constantly want to be right. Now back to your leadership example. That's what happens to you. You make a first impression, and if it might be bad, your challenge is not what just happened. I mean, obviously, depending on the degree of what you did wrong, was it just something small, or are we talking about really horrible things that you could do as a leader? But let's just say you presented yourself in a way that was just not the correct way in that moment. The others won't let go of that because their brain is looking for proof afterwards. You are not fighting the first impression, you are fighting those unconscious biases. And that will take time, and that will take consistency, and that will take patience for you, where you can have to again and again reinforce that their biases are wrong, that they are going down the wrong path, that they need to be more self-aware and aware about you, that their opinion was wrong. Yes, you can start out with an apology. That's the best always to do. Say sorry and actually mean it. Address it openly and don't find excuses or reasoning why you did it. That doesn't matter. Just admit whatever went wrong and add the lesson that you have learned and make a promise for the future what is going to change. But from there on, all you can offer is consistency and holding your word and patience, because their biases are working against you. They are in your leadership elevator and they are looking for that breakfast menu. They are in your leadership room and they are looking for that little piece of paper that proves to them that you are going to make that mistake again. As sorry as I am, I don't have better news for you.
I love it. Something sparked, and I sparked something while you were talking, and it kind of moves beautifully into, because you talk a lot about unconscious biases, which is great. One thing that came to my mind is that leaders unintentionally project their own biases on their own teams, right? Okay, we see it all the time. Okay, as an example, they might say, well, their belief system might be, well, I'll stick the extroverts into a group because they're the best at creating new ideas or bringing new innovations to the company or whatever it might be. How can leaders spot those hidden biases in their own decision making and foster more of a culture of trust with their team?
Well, first of all, with a high level of awareness that you are biased. I am biased, you are biased, Adam, and so is every listener out there. if you right now think, well, I am not biased, then I have very bad news for you. We are all biased because the moment we set foot on that planet Earth, we are influenced by the culture we grew in, by the country we grew in, by our parents, by our friends, by our mentors, by all of our surroundings and experiences that we make. So the biggest breakthrough is the awareness and to admit that you are biased every single day in every single decision. And even I, being in that business, have to remind myself daily in the decisions that I make, that I often step back and reflect, why am I doing this right now? Am I doing this because of or? Right? So, and I think that is already a huge step to compare to other leaders who never do that. Right? That stepping back. The second advice that I can give you is to surround yourself with people you are the most biased about. I can tell you that my network of closest friends, closest mentors, colleagues has dramatically changed since I'm in the United States. When I look back in my corporate career, I had a tendency to surround myself with like-minded people because we all had one common goal, and it was easier to work with those who had similar values and beliefs and biases like I had.
Right.
And guess what? As a team, we were always right. Turns out we were always, all of us, right. And saw the world so beautifully simple. Here in the United States, I learned to expose myself to people that make me uncomfortable. And those have become the greatest teachers in my career.
Wow.
To expose myself to those perspectives and to allow them to find my blind spots. The things that I am not aware of have been the greatest gifts of those relationships.
How did that make you feel when you first embraced that? Because, I mean, from someone who's originally from Europe, going to the United States, different culture, completely different culture. And they all say Americans are very open-minded and so forth, so forth. But how did it make you feel? How did it make you feel at the point? I mean, you're obviously used to that now, and you feel very, should we say, you're very humbled by the experience. But how did it make you feel, first of all?
Well, I can actually tell you, very honestly, when it happened the first time, I cried.
Really? Wow.
I had such a strong, I was at the conference. Let me say, when I became aware of it the first time, I was at a conference and I happened to be involved backstage. I was not speaking, I was helping out as a volunteer. It was a conference for speakers.
Nice.
And due to this role, I was somehow involved in a rehearsal.
Huh.
And then the speaker who was about to rehearse for the big main stage performance, I saw her from afar and I looked at her and I 100% openly misjudged her. She is everything that I am not. You would put the two of us never into a room. And I had all of my judgmental thinking lined up of how this will go horrible. And to make matter worse, she even spoke about a similar topic like I spoke. So I was just sitting there and waiting to be right in my assumptions that this is going to go wrong and that this was a bad choice that we put this person on stage, because it was so out of it. It's, there are 10 professional speakers and then you have this one unicorn where you think, what is happening here? And I sat in the rehearsal and at the end of the rehearsal, I cried. It was one of the best keynotes I have ever heard. She presented the topics that we both speak about. She held me a mirror. I thought we were speaking about the same topic. And yes, in the middle we do, but I heard her perspective. She's a diversity and inclusion speaker. And since ever then, that day, I stood up, I went up to her, I hugged her, I told her I need you in my life, and we are best friends till today. And she is my sounding board when I need insights into her world of diversity inclusion that I don't have, and where I know I'm a privileged white woman. Even if in theory I would speak about it, I don't have those insights. The insights that I have are biased by my own circumstances.
But when you created that bias in your mind,
Yeah.
I want to quickly go back really, really quickly. And you had that unconscious bias made up. What was it that was convincing you that your bias was so right? Was it your ego? Why was you so right? Why was you so fixated on wanting to be right?
Yeah, let's go back to my ABCDE. And I know that my friend wouldn't, we are so close friends, she wouldn't mind sharing this, right?
Sure.
I looked at her. She did not look anything like the traditional speaker. I mean, we are talking yellow, pink, green, blue hair, sequins, skirt, dress, overlays, the most out of the order, colorful, what you wouldn't expect at a professional speakers conference where everybody shows up in a traditional navy blue suit. Right? She was just, oh my God, she was a peacock. She was the peacock showing up, and I'm kind of, yeah, nah. Right? The second, her behavior. She had an attitude and her communication that was so out of the order for us. So, or for me, I'm saying us, but for me, I was so not used to having somebody talk this way, behave this way, have a level or humor this way. Wait, what? You can say that on stage? But I came straight from Europe, right? I was still biased with I lived and worked in Germany for 20 years. We laugh on the inside, but not on the outside.
That's so true, by the way. For you German audience, by the way, we know how serious life is. We know.
Her digital footprint, I have seen stuff from her online before, and if you thought about knowing her, I just rejected everything that I saw. So I was just, I'm using my own framework and my own instruments. I was just influenced and didn't take time to allow to edit the story, to edit the narrative that I had in my head until she forced me to edit it. And luckily I listened, and I'm so grateful.
Very good. Love that. That's beautiful. I love that word perspective. Gives you a different ideology. I wanted to ask, if I may, well, there was a couple of things actually just off the back of this. We all know that emotional intelligence is vital in leadership. We all know that. But in terms of, could over-indexing on empathy or adaptability ever undermine us as leaders? What's the line that you take between emotional intelligence and, say, perceived indecisiveness or over Mother Teresa type of person?
Well, my advice is always, as leaders, number one goal is not to be liked. It shouldn't be to be liked. It should be to be respected. So let's call it your Mother Teresa challenge. If this is your first approach, you may enjoy it right now because you are liked. You are that caring leader that takes care of everybody. But wait until a storm shows up. Let me share another story from my leadership journey. I once had the pleasure for leaders to organize a leadership training led by horses. Instead of a trainer, we went into a horse stall or a horse arena, And we had to go through several exercises. And with the help of horses, we learned several leadership principles. And one of the most impactful for me was the following. We were split up in two groups, 10 leaders first, 10 leaders after. The first group got the following task. We got a whip, each of us, and each of us, singles or one after the other, had to go into the horse arena, but there was a horse without any, how do you call it, tools on them, just a naked blunt horse, right? And our job was to start throwing that whip on the floor, just to whip very energetic, right? And the trainer didn't give us much other instructions. He just said, whip as long as you want. And whenever you feel you are done, stop it. We all thought, what is that, right? So I went into this arena and started to whip. And that horse out of a sudden started to run in a circle around me. And it was so much fun. The more I whipped, the faster it became, right? And I was whipping and whipping and whipping, and it was just fascinating. And then at one point I thought, I'm done. Probably the horse is exhausted, and I stopped whipping. And I looked at the horse, and the horse looked at me. We both didn't know what's happening, quite frankly. And then I wanted to leave. And Adam, from that moment, that horse was walking behind me, following me anywhere, over days. It was always just behind me. It was always close to me. And when I walked somewhere on the farm, that horse was behind me. The second group, now to come back to your example, had a different task. They were in a different horse stall. We didn't know at this point what they are doing. They got the following task. They brought them treats, carrots, I don't know, bread, whatever you feed horses, right? And they said, we want you to go into the arena down to your horse, and we want you to pet it and feed it and give it treats and build a relationship with the horse first. And then make the horse follow you. And guess what happened?
He didn't follow.
All of them failed, because once the horse was always willing to follow as long as there were treats. But when the treats were gone, when the horse understood there are no treats anymore, they didn't follow anymore. And it was such a profound lesson for me. As a leader or business owner, especially at the beginning, your number one goal, and I'm not saying you should whip them, so don't get me wrong. It is a metaphor. This is a metaphor, please. Your number one goal is to set a tone, to create a respectful relationship. Then it's quite easier that if there are moments where empathy is needed and where you have to get personal and care to go there and come back, then the other way around. If you start with that Mother Teresa, I'm all nurturing and kind and nice and want to be liked by you approach, it will be tough for you the moment something goes wrong in your business, in your organization, in your relationship with that, to then turn on and say, but now I'm going to whip.
It makes life a bit uncomfortable, doesn't it? I love that story. I thought that was really, really compelling. Anyway, listen, we could talk for hours around leadership. I love your stories. I love your metaphors. And I love the frameworks that we've talked about, because I think we've covered a lot of ground. And I hope for you guys that are listening in, by the way, I hope it's given you some perspective, some context. And I hope that Sylvie has given you some ideas on how to be a better leader more than anything else, right? A better leader, because that's what we're all striving to do, is to be better. And also, one thing that I wanted to point out to Sylvie as well, especially when it comes to unconscious biases, is we all have choices. All of us has choices. Whether we choose to have a shitty day, guess what? You choose to have a shitty day. If you choose to walk into the office and it's going to be a bad day in the office, then guess what? It will be a bad day in the office, because you choose to make it a bad day in the office, right? So I just want to kind of put that out there. And that's kind of like the Adam words of wisdom, by the way. Would you agree with that, by the way, Sylvie?
Absolutely. But before we finish, Adam,
Yes.
let me add one more thing so that you know that you, based on the words you chose and how you presented yourself in the last nearly 60 minutes or so we are in, you are something I call a perception persona that is called the traditionalist. The traditionalist has a keyword. The keyword is values. High values are very important for the traditionalist. This can either be a value like belief, faith, family, trust, reliability. The traditionalist, if I, for example, would go into their wardrobe, I would find a lot of traditional clothing in there, conservative clothing. Nothing is too tight, nothing is too short, nothing is too flashy, nothing is too modern. You know, it is just the way we have learned to dress. Everything is a little bit boxy and straight. So those are not the gentlemen who, for example, would wear an Italian catsuit. Those are the gentlemen who wear an American catsuit or an English catsuit. But a suit itself is totally okay for you because this is what we have learned when we go to work and have high power conversations. We wear a suit at work. If I would look into your colors, probably I would find a lot of navy blue, navy gray, charcoal gray, navy blue, charcoal gray, dark colors. If you go crazy, probably you add something like a Bordeaux red to your wardrobe. But never something like a yellow or a pink or something super, super flashy. When it comes to your relationships, loyalty is very important to you. Consistency is very important to you. Being dependable is very important to you. Being responsible is very important to you. Behavior and communication is always appropriate. You don't try to overstep the line on purpose. You might have that little hint or flair to sometimes tune it up a little bit because of your secondary persona. But in general, you respect that there are limitations. Traditionalists can very well navigate within limitations and respect them, even if that means that they don't change them. The biggest challenge of the traditionalist is that their enemy is what I call the avant-garde. The avant-garde is the out of the door person. They don't follow any rules. They question everything. They are always stepping outside the line. They just want to bend everything that the traditionalist believes in. And that's why they, for example, never work well in other, although they would need each other. Because one of the traditionalist challenges is very often that they kind of are perceived as borderline a little bit boring, a little bit too conservative. We don't see the Stephen Jobs instantly in them, who's gonna invent the multi-billion-dollar organizations or products and services. And we could actually benefit from the avant-garde because that's what they guys do. And the avant-garde could very much benefit from the traditionalists because they just run with an idea and they try to execute it and they ignore everything what others have learned in the past or rules or regulations that are just important for them. The traditionalist is usually very reserved. They have a digital footprint, but it's very, it's not for virality. They don't want to go viral because that would be out of the order. They use it very strategically to, for example, showcase their knowledge and their expertise. Their environment, very traditional. If I go into their homes, I see a lot of wooden furniture, a lot of traditional furniture, probably a carpet, probably a traditional couch. There are family pictures all over. Or there are memories from vacations or places that they have visited. They love memories or they love memories, right? Parts of their traditions. They love celebrations, usually not the wife parties, but family gatherings. Family is extremely important to them. How am I doing so far?
You're doing okay. Not bad. Not bad. But I wouldn't say you're 100%.
Mhm.
I would say that there is definitely some elements of truth. I love navy blue, by the way, but I also love red. I mean, I
Mhm.
love red and I love gold, those types of things. I hate gray. I'm not a gray person. Sorry.
Mhm.
Gray and beige are probably my worst colors in the
Yeah.
world. But you're right. Family's important to me. What was I going to say to you? Yeah, it reminded it. I had this flashback when you was talking, right? And you were talking about navy blue and grey. And then, what came into my mind that I'll share with this, and I've never shared anything like this before. When I was 12 years old, I bought a Ben Sherman salmon pink shirt.
Oh.
It was, wow. It made me stand out big time. Now, for a white guy, okay, for a white 12-year-old, in fact, it was more like 14. Pink, salmon pink with a white who hadn't been out in the sun for about 12 months.
Mhm.
Boy, did it absorb me. It was like camouflage. It really was.
They all
But
have
yeah,
these features. Good.
we do. So no more pink salmon shirts in my wardrobe, I can assure you on that one. In terms of digital footprint, I think, well, I'd like to think that I have a pretty good digital footprint. But I think that there is certainly some other elements of truth. Family is important. You mentioned travel and things like that. So yeah, I'd probably say that you were about, for me, I'd say around a 7 out of 10.
Good.
That's not bad.
That's not bad. That's not bad. Based on one word and a
Yeah,
wonderful time together.
absolutely.
But I'm hoping that one day we can spend more time together. And if you want to find out more, I have an audit on my website that you can take for free to find out your perception persona. And how about you
Oh.
give it, Adam, a try to see if I'm totally wrong or if it might confirm what I just said to you.
And that really applies to the other traditionalists that are out there. And if we're a match, great. I'd love to hear from you guys. But even if you are not a traditionalist, by the way, we'd love to hear from you guys. Make sure you go over to Sylvie's website, fill in the audit. It's completely a free resource anyway. Get that free resource. I think it could really help you guys based on all of the things that we've spoken about. First of all, Sylvie, I just want to say this has been a ball. It's been great.
Thank you very much. Same
Thank you.
here. Really enjoyed being with you.
Absolutely. Hope you've enjoyed. If this is the first time, by the way, that you've listened to the Business Strategist, congratulations. I hope we haven't disappointed you. Do me a favor, go over to Spotify and Apple, hit that subscribe button, and leave a 1 or a 5-star review. I would greatly appreciate that. If anything in this, I ask for nothing other than that. From me and Sylvie, thank you so much, and we'll see you again up on the Business Strategist. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye bye.